This is House Corrections and Institutions Committee. It is, what day is today? Friday, May 9th,
Yeah,
right? We're a little bit after 11 o'clock. We've just been kind of filling in our time because we have completed the work on our capital budget, and that the conference committee report will be up on the floor next week here on the House, probably Wednesday is what I'm anticipating. We'll go to the Senate first, and we'll be up in the Senate next Tuesday, next week. So our work on the capital budget has been completed. So we're tying up loose ends, and we have with us the BTS. We wanted to do some background information in terms of renovations that were to occur at the Essex facility. I call it the Secure Mental Health Secure Residential Facility. There's 16 beds there for the Department of Mental Health for folks who do not need as much security as they would receive at the state hospital in Berlin. It's more of a step-down facility. Last year, up in Human Services Committee, they talked about converting some of those beds up there to be used for a forensic unit. And the forensic unit would be for those folks who are being evaluated by the court for competency to stand trial. I'm doing it really broad and high level, competency to stand trial, or guilty by the defense of insanity at the time of the crime. They've needed to be housed, and sometimes they're housed at the state hospital. And there was thinking of converting some of these beds over to house forensic folks. What that triggers is what is called emergency involuntary procedure rule, and the building was not built to meet those rules. So we had to do some renovations in order to meet those requirements. We did put a little bit of money in last year's capital bill for BGS to address this. So we have with us Sabrina, welcome. And if you could identify yourself for the record, and Sabrina's going to go over with us real quick what has occurred.
Thank you. It's Sabrina Karish, project manager with BGS. So this is the emergency involuntary procedures updates. So we are adding a small addition onto the east wing of the building for that EIP suite. That includes the EIP room, a consultant space, and the ant room, which is the observation room. This is the wing of the building that has the set of double doors.
So you're not adding patient rooms,
You're not adding patient rooms, no.
because there's 16 beds in there already.
Correct. So we are repurposing a little bit of programming space, but we are not reducing the bed number.
And it will be a separate entrance into the facility?
It would utilize the main core of the facility. There is a separate entrance in this yard. That's more of a question for DMH's policy of how they'll work those beds.
So where is the entrance to the current facility?
Current facility entrance is right here.
Okay, so
I was,
that's where we went, folks. You were with us, right, Troy?
yeah, I was,
2 years
couldn't
ago.
find it, and then I couldn't remember what it looked like at ground level, but now
Mhm.
when you just
Oops.
moved your cursor, it came right back to me, so.
Yeah, right here. And then here is where this addition would be.
Would everyone be going through that door?
Well, that's what I want to find out. So your main entrance is there in the front or part of it. So for a forensic patient, for a mental health, for a person with a secure residential for mental health, what entrance are they use? That main door?
They would be using that main door as well.
And what about a person that would be for the forensic beds?
I believe they would be using this main door as well.
Oh, because we made it clear we wanted separate.
That was when they were looking at the state hospital. So does that have to be the same for this? Because that's what we were looking at. They wanted to use a few beds in a wing at the state hospital originally. And we wanted that to make sure they were separated.
Can you just remind me where that separate entrance originated from? Was that Human Services a requirement? Is that statute requirement already?
Or was it us?
I can't remember why we were talking about a separate entrance and separate, because this can be closed off. I remember that. And this wing can be separated in function from the rest of the building. I just don't remember who initiated the separate entrance conversation.
I don't either.
I don't either, but we talked about it a lot upstairs last
Did you
year.
talk about the separate entrance?
Yeah,
Was it statute?
I don't remember. It's just, but I know we talked about it quite a bit.
So is there a separate entrance to the addition that you're putting on?
So this is an entrance that goes through the yard here, and there's a gate here to this wing that can be closed off from the rest of this.
So how many, on the gray, not the photo, but the gray there, where are the beds?
So the beds start right here and they're across from each other here and here. And unfortunately, I didn't include those double doors on the plan, but those double doors are right around.
To the rest of the facility?
Yes,
So how many beds are you talking for?
this is 8 beds in this wing. There's 8 beds in each.
Half of the wing is gonna be forensic? Half of that facility is gonna be forensic?
Where our double doors are, I believe, yes.
I think you're only talking like 3 or 4 beds.
Yeah, I thought it was only a couple.
So that means that we are back where we were with the trailers. If we lose those 8 beds that are for mental health, for secure residential, we're back to where we were with the trailers up in Middlesex. With only an
I
8.
think you'll have to discuss with DMH their policy and how they plan to run the facility.
Because our impression was what came out of your committee, James, last
Mhm.
year was like 3 or 4 beds,
Yeah.
not 8, not 8 beds. Have you been working with DMH on this? Well, this is really going into something a little bigger than what we had anticipated last year.
Yep.
Has Human Services Committee looked at this upstairs at all?
I haven't testified on this at all this year.
I would think
DMH may
it
have.
has.
Could I
But you've
get a little more understanding of these particular individuals? Are they restrained 24 hours?
Well, they're not restrained.
So,
They need a little higher security.
so they're not a harm to each other within the facility?
We
I mean,
hope
if
they're
they're
not.
mentally, we don't know what their mental state is, that whether they're,
Well, they're in the criminal courts.
yeah,
A person who is involuntarily housed at our state facility.
right.
Our hospital, they are in civil. They're not criminal. This is criminal charges that, and the court has ordered an evaluation of them to see if they can stand trial.
Right, but so that to me says that they're more dangerous than less dangerous if this is criminal versus
Not
civil.
necessarily because they have created a criminal act. That's the difference. If someone has a mental health breakdown, they're not creating a criminal act, but they may need to be involuntarily housed to be stabilized, but they haven't committed any criminal activity and they're not being charged in court on a criminal charge.
Okay, that's what I'm.
They have to go through a civil process to be involuntarily held in the state hospital for mental health issues. They could be psychotic, they could be bipolar,
Mhm.
severe depression, suicidal. But it's an involuntary placement
Right.
within our state hospital.
Okay.
It is not voluntary.
Right. So that's why.
But you have to
that's
go
what I
through
was
the
trying to- so
courts.
this is-
This is criminal, where they may have killed somebody in a community, and the court may need a mental health evaluation to see if the person is competent to stand trial, but there is a criminal charge there. And the court may order, I don't want to get into hospitalization and non-hospitalization. This is DMH's world. The court may order the person be held and go through a mental health evaluation to see if the person is competent to stand trial
Right.
or insane at the time of the crime. They have been criminally charged. they need to be held somewhere, and they're
Right.
not going to be held in a correctional facility because they have to have that mental health evaluation.
And this is where we're thinking about them being.
Right, because we don't have a place for them right now, except down here in Berlin at the state hospital. Mary,
Ellis, I'm wondering if the bed count went up, because if we all think about it, we've had 3 or 4 murders in just the last, I would say, less than half a year. So maybe they thought bringing it up to 5 or 6. I mean, I don't know what the rationale is, but I think 5 or 6 beds or whatever we're thinking here is not over the top for what's actually happening in the state. We probably actually need more beds than that.
but the question is, they have a criminal charge, they're being detained,
We understand.
and where are they being detained? So that's how to think of it, Kevin. There's a criminal charge, they're being detained, they're a detainee, basically.
Yeah.
But they're not held in corrections because they need that mental health evaluation.
Right.
So we can schedule DMH to come in and really talk more about forensic, because forensics is complicated. You've got those who are being charged, they haven't been convicted of a crime. But the issue is competent to stand trial.
But I would also have to remind everyone, I believe we are the only state, or the second only state, that does not have a forensic facility.
And the question for a forensic facility, and if you're housing someone long-term, are they under the jurisdiction of the Commissioner of Mental Health? Or are they under the jurisdiction of the Commissioner of Corrections?
The other thing that comes to mind, I can't remember if this is the one that it was connected to, is weren't we worried about losing Medicaid?
It was Medicaid, and I think that's why you needed this separate.
Excellent, yeah.
Separate. That's what I was wondering too, if it was Medicaid, because Medicaid covers the beds here at the secure residential. Don't know if they would cover the beds for forensic.
It comes to mind that that's the reason.
And that's when they were looking down at the Berlin facility, because they were thinking of converting 4 or 5 beds over there. And the question is, with CMS, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services on the federal level, they have some strict requirements in terms of Medicaid dollars going to beds. So I'd like to really figure out why we've gone from 4 or 5 beds to 8 beds, and then how that's going to impact the step down ability from the state hospital. That's going to create that backlog like it used to. And the money's a lot more than we ever anticipated.
You know how many residents are in secure residential right now?
I don't, it was built for 16.
Well, this is 8 of them. But I just don't know how many are in that wing. There were only 3 or 4 the last
Well,
time.
they had just opened.
I know.
When we went there, it just
I
barely.
just didn't know there, if we've got a sense of average use right now.
So I think we gotta do a little bit of, we need the background in terms of explaining forensic, because you've got the little F and you got the big F. And are they anticipating holding the big F here? Those are folks who have been convicted. I don't know. We can go, it's a pretty deep subject. But I'd be also concerned how that's gonna impact the mental health piece with a step down ability from the state hospital.
Which, explain that. I don't understand what the step down thing is.
The state hospital is level 1 acuity. So when a person is admitted involuntarily to the state hospital, they are in a acute state, and it is termed level 1. And you need higher security, different staffing for that level. And once a person becomes stabilized and can function, they're not at that level 1 of acuity. But they still need a secure setting, but they could have more freedom. they could assimilate back into, life, they could go to the Middlesex facility or Essex facility as a step down. So you have, it's still a secure facility, but you can cook your own meals, you have more freedom, it's more of a residential set.
Is that what they were envisioning with this building, to make the other wing the step down? Originally it was,
It was 16 beds,
right,
step down
gotcha,
for mental health to help the backlog
yeah,
in the state hospital. Because the state hospital, once you stabilize someone, they don't need that level of acuity care, but they still need care. We didn't have enough beds because we had the trailers up in Middlesex. There was only 8 beds. And that was creating a backlog in the beds at the hospital, which then was creating a backlog back in your emergency rooms back home, because it'd be level 1 folks who are tied up in your emergency rooms in the hospital because there was no bed available for them, because they couldn't empty the bed because they needed the secure residential. So we built the 16-bed facility to take care of that step down. And then folks would be at the secure residential for a while, and then they could step down to a community setting possibly, or go back home, depending. So to take 8 beds offline, how is that going to impact further up the system? How is that going to impact? We built this facility, 16 million it cost, and it came in about, I think, 2 million over cost because of COVID. I think it ended up at 18, 19 million total. And this is where Woodside used to be.
Oh, right.
This is where Woodside was.
Mhm.
And we tore down part of that building when Woodside was closed. We kept some of the building, like where the gym was, I think. But we tore down the core of the building. But we had that site. So that's why we're looking for a juvenile center to replace the old Woodside. So now we're changing this. So questions on that at all in terms of,
Is this all the money you need to finish this?
we'll go into this.
Oh, okay.
So we're also doing some renovations to the gym to accommodate for the programming shuffle we're doing inside, adding a conference room, training room out here, and storage for the facility. I'm leaving a half basketball court. This gym was left over from the original facility. The rest of the building from one side was torn down. So the estimated project cost is 700,000. We had a balance from the appropriation from the original project for 750, and a balance from 25 for this preliminary design. We have 50,000 left over. We do have some design already encumbered. So that is what we have remaining.
So we put money in last year's capital bill.
Yes.
Was that 100? How much was that? Do you remember?
I don't think it was quite 100,000. And that was for preliminary design.
Preliminary design. So that's 700,000.
That was left over from original construction.
That was a repro group. That was the repro. Do you have the spreadsheet from last biennium?
Part of that money, some money was repoed. This was held back for this project.
Right, but we did have a line item we put in last year's conference committee for this. And I don't know if it was bonded or cash.
It was cash.
It was cash.
May I ask, what is your responsibility with this whole?
So I'm a project manager for BGS. So I advise, I hire the architects, contractors, help DMH with their program requirements, make sure DMH is getting the program that they want. And then I manage the contracts for design.
Best one in the state, too. Best one in the state.
Yeah,
Did you find it?
Oh, what did we call it?
Oh, what is it called?
River
River
Valley.
Valley Therapeutic Residence.
That's his real name.
It's under either BGS or Agency of Human Services or CATCH.
I'm in the back right now, but I'm not seeing.
If that's the right one.
It's really hard to. Because we,
The only one I'm seeing is Is it the short-term secure standard?
Yes.
And that's 750 for FY 24.
No,
What line is that?
That's.
That's line
TCF.
193. Yeah, that's
TCF.
TCF.
If you show it to me.
That's what it is.
You said it was definitely cash.
750. It's right here.
Sure it was.
That's
TCF.
I'm wrong.
Why would it be DC?
It's not, that's not
No.
it. That's a
It-
different product.
What was that?
Maybe it wasn't catching. I mean, from wrong.
Agencies. I remember that. Where is it? Oh,
There it
here,
is. No, that's not it.
50,000. Line 29, 50,000. Facility requirements, review and construction of improvements. And you have a note, 640,000 possible costs, because we did take preliminary.
Okay.
So we put in 50,000 because Human Services said, well, just put the people there. And I raised the issue, wait a minute, don't we need to do some renovations there because you're doing the EIPs and we.
Yep.
When we built this facility, was supposed to have be qualified for EIPs, emergency involuntary procedures, because you need certain requirements. We took all that out. So I said, wait a minute, you can't just put forensic folks in there and have EIPs without the building being renovated to comply. So we put in 50,000. So that 700,000 is left over from when we built that 16-bed facility.
Correct.
That's why it couldn't get reallocated. Remember the repro committee talked about this?
No, that was something different. You're thinking about the 600,000. I don't remember what that was for. That's something different though.
It's something different. I thought it
Yeah,
was this.
we didn't look at this during repo.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna double check my statement on that, but. Oh, keep going.
That's 700,000. Is that bonded? That's bonded. So you had 750,000 total. So the 750,000 is left over from the construction of this of the 16-bed facility. And then last year you got 50,000. To bring it up to 800,000. And right now you have a balance of 664,800, and your projected cost is 700,000.
I already have some cost encumbered, so that I have enough to finish the project.
So you're still within that 700,000 cost, project cost.
2022, it was 680, 2022 residential recovery facility. We thought we were gonna get it back and then Joe said, no.
Right. So that's at 700?
Yeah, well, I have it as 680. Right, so then Joe caught that, but no, you can't. We're using it for this. Okay.
Has that work begun?
We are in design right now. We're finishing up construction documents. We have some local permitting to do, and then we're hoping to start in the fall of this year.
And try to still get that done by next spring.
Yes.
Right.
Do you have to do any change in local permitting?
Yes, we will have to go through local permitting. So it is dependent on that and of course availability of contractors.
So what the blueprint that's up there,
Mhm.
can you explain what that's gonna be?
Yes,
I have to read it from you.
Sorry, yes. This is the gym. This was left over from Woodside. We took a quarter of it for the maintenance shop when we built River Valley. We're taking another quarter of it to make up for the programming space that we are losing inside the building for the EIP suite, and then leaving a half court for recreation.
Is that recreation gonna be used for both populations
Yes.
at separate times?
You have to ask DMH when their policy
Because
is.
that was the issue with CMS, with Medicaid. So if people are interested, we should get DMH in here to really
Mhm.
talk about this.
Yep.
Because this has turned into a much bigger project than what you folks anticipated, because you were saying, oh, it's just a couple, 3 beds,
Yeah,
right? It's
that's-
no big deal, and we'll put them up there.
That's my recollection.
So
Kevin?
how could a project like this expand without the appropriate committee knowing that that's happening? I don't understand.
Well, maybe Human Services knows and they haven't relayed to us because they don't understand how connected we are to construction of buildings. I mean, I'm being blunt, but nobody ever thinks of us in terms of, oh, we'll just do this. And it's like, wait a minute.
But to get this far without us being aware and it basically doubling in size, it sort of blows my mind.
Well, me too, but they're within the project cost. And I don't know if there's been any testimony from GMH on human service upstairs in human services. Because BGS hasn't been reached out to, because most committees don't think to reach out to BGS. They just take care of the bricks and the concrete and mow the lawn.
It happens.
Happens. I'm just really concerned on this in terms of what pressure it's gonna do on the mental health beds as a whole. I'm really concerned about this and James, you're connected to Human Services.
I can ask.
Could you ask if they've heard anything about updates on the forensic beds?
Yep,
And if
I
they
will.
know how many?
I'll ask Big T today.
um,
I have like basic questions about design. Is that appropriate for now? I
Mhm.
mean, I heard somebody refer to doubling in size, but how many beds are actually being added, new ones?
If I can get on.
It's actually
We have
have-
16 beds there.
Having size.
We have 16 beds there now. We have 2 wings, 8 beds per wing.
And we're just making 8 of those into this new category. So we're not adding any. We're just
We're
converting 8.
taking away
Yeah,
Right.
that secure residential step down,
the
possibly.
doubling comes from what we thought or what we understood to be like 3 beds.
I see.
Let me
And,
just
We'll
double
find-
check where those double doors are.
and law requires that
They
the
weren't in the-
population
that
be
wing.
segregated. What?
CMS, which was Medicaid.
Yeah.
Getting the state,
Oh,
I remember.
the state gets
There,
Medicaid,
it was right at the core of the building.
Yeah, I'm,
the
Whole
state,
wing shuts.
the state gets Medicaid dollars for those mental health beds. They don't get Medicaid dollars, I believe, for the forensic beds.
All 8 of them?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a facile question. We keep referring to beds, but like the beds themselves, nothing's changing there. It's just what the walls, the doors, what's,
You have to keep the population separated.
yeah.
And earlier when we talked about this, when they were looking at doing forensic at the state hospital, I think you need a separate entrance to comply with Medicaid, because if you don't have a separate entrance and you've got mental health beds that are being paid for by Medicaid, and you don't have a separate entrance for your forensic people, would put your Medicaid dollars in jeopardy for those mental health.
So we talked about that at length.
Now, to add a little quirk, I don't want to confuse things, but I will. According to CMS, which is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, it's federal. CMS controls your Medicare dollars and they control your Medicaid dollars. And CMS has all sorts of rules, regulations, laws. If you want to have Medicaid dollars for your mental health beds in a facility, it has to be 16 beds or less. If it's over 16 beds, you are termed an Institute of Mental Disease and you do not get Medicaid.
Wow.
So that's why there's 16 beds in this facility, okay? Because we wanted to get Medicaid dollars for those beds. The state hospital, now when we lost Waterbury to Irene, our state hospital had 52 beds up there, and we were looking at building a secure residential at that time. But when we rebuilt the state hospital, we were doing 16 beds in Berlin. And in negotiations with the administration and this committee and appropriation and services committee, there was a real need for more beds. And we worked up a waiver with CMS so that we could go to 25 beds at the state hospital and still receive Medicaid dollars. Those Medicaid dollars, according to the waiver, are going to be going away in a few years. That was our testimony a few years ago, so I don't know where we are now. And that has to constantly, that waiver has to be renewed on a regular basis. And I don't know if it's every 5 years or 8 years or 10 years or something, but according to testimony a year or two ago, it looks like that timeframe's coming up to be renewed. So if you go over that 16, you lose your Medicaid for those beds.
And specifically 16 forensic beds. I mean, what if we have 24?
They don't cover forensic.
Okay, so what if you have 16 and 8 though? Does that still qualify? Is your cap at
That
16?
could be problematic unless they're physically separated.
Yeah, okay.
I think you have to be physically separated.
I feel like that was one of the reasons, like Mary said, about the separate doors, but.
Yeah.
I
Separate
sent the
entrance.
message too.
Separate entrance
Yeah.
too.
So then,
Because we also wanted to put a secure residential closer to the state hospital. And there's a mushy thing in CMS, if you're within certain mileage of your core where you have mental health beds and you build more mental health beds within a radius of certain miles, you lose your Medicaid. So that's why it's further up the road and not near the state hospital, because then we lose Medicaid. I hope I'm right. I'm just-
sounds right.
I've been working on this whole thing since about 2005, 2006, because that's when we started wanting to replace the state hospital. Medicaid is the driver here.
Teresa said, we haven't heard anything new about forensics. Total facility was up to 8 originally. With space
8
1 to 2.
originally?
Yeah, with space 1 to 2 for people with DD and ID. I don't know DD and ID.
DD is developmentally disabled.
Yes, that's right. So that's maybe that's where 1 to 2 came from. So,
But they were thinking the full 8 beds
Yeah.
for forensic.
yeah.
I remember hearing 6 or 8. But I
I didn't
didn't,
think we were taking a whole wing offline.
that's why we talked about the the separate entrances, because it was going to be more like 6 or 8 in my recall of the discussion.
It all happened at the end of the session last year.
Yeah.
We were
Kind of a blur.
and we were in conference with the Capitol bill, and that's when I said, wait a minute, you're gonna have to do some renovations in there, because nobody upstairs thought they had to renovate anything, just put them in the beds, and I asked BGS, I said, we've got to comply with the EIPs. And that building was not built to comply with the EIPs. That's a story unto itself. Sabrina, thank you. Working on the building.
Get that done. Good luck with some contractors this fall.
Oh, geez.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sabrina.
Do you want to weigh in at all? Do you dare?
I'm speaking for you, Madam Chair.
Nice.
For me to be free, right? Okay. Uh-oh, here comes trouble.
Thank you, sir. Awesome.
Yeah.
You guys are the champion.
I know, what's this?
That's his farm, Nelson
Oh,
Farm.
Nelson Farms, that's right. And you got your Sweeney.
You got a Sweeney hat, so I got a Nelson.
We gotta do our Sweeney hat picture.
We're offline now.
So, we can take more testimony on this if folks want. Well, if we want to or not. Do you want to get some background on forensic?
I'd like to.
Love to.
I think we should,
Yeah.
Be curious at least to know need on both sides.
right.
or projected need, you know?
Sometimes you hear they're already housing these folks right now in a mental health bed, and usually they're up at the state hospital. But we can do that. What time next week? So are people really interested? We'll see if we can do some field trips. I'll talk to speaker and see. So next week's good weather. Figure something out. Anything else before we finish up for today and go home?
Or if, and it doesn't, whenever that is, or if at all, it's also home of Constitution Hall, right? Which is a
Constitution House.
house,
It's in Windsor.
which is which is, state property. I
Yeah.
believe.
It's work being done there.
Yeah, there's some mold issues there.
They closed it. They get it done.
And there's a anniversary, is it a 200-year anniversary?
200 or 250?
Yeah.
Yeah, 250.
That's a long trip. We can discuss that. Anything else?